All right, there we go. So we got Bishop Nathan Wilson, Father Lorenzo, and then I got my credentials to be considered a bishop, which I do appreciate. Thank God. You know what I'm saying? There's so many ways that you could put that. Some people will look at that and hear that differently, especially since when it comes to the word God. And this discussion is basically, journey through the origins of history, the book that I just published, because you guys wanted to ask me a couple of questions. And I feel like, hey, that's it's pretty interesting. And I'm definitely willing and honored to be able to do that. What's up with you guys? How y'all been doing today?
Good. Everything is all good on
Many
my end.
blessings. So,
Yeah.
in regards, who wants to begin on the questions? I want to say congratulations as well with the book first, and for anyone watching,
Yes.
highly recommend
Yeah.
it as well. Anything that I recommend as well, especially in writing form. He's a wonderful writer, highly recommend, and you can definitely use it and adapt it to your own knowledge, 100%. So I always recommend Tyrone and subscribe to his YouTube channel. And he's also got a Facebook page. He's also with us on the Gnostic Union, but check him out on Rebirth of the Word on Facebook. He's also on Twitter, which is now X, and you can find him on YouTube, as mentioned before, and his website.
Man, yes, man. I appreciate that, man. I'm not gonna lie, I've known Nathan for a while and I met Lorenzo through Nathan, and I can tell you there's definitely a connection between us because we all definitely look for that knowledge. I'm reading a book now. Let me see. It's this, the Gnostic Gospels, right?
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, and it's supposed to be hold on, let me bring it up. It's let me get to the cover page. So it's the Master Collection, right? And it's the rejected gospel of Mary Magdalene, Thomas, Truth, Judas, Peter, Philip, Pisces, Sophia, and so much more. And it includes 22 supplementary apocrypha for a complete immersion. And it's by Jeremy Payton. I like Gnosticism. I like Gnostics. I love the information. I love the idea. Because when I look at Gnostic and I go to the meaning and definition of it, it basically just means knowledge. Like, I've read so many different books. Matter of fact, when I told Nathan about Twitter and the X Spaces and stuff like that, he joined the space, and there was this one guy on there, right? And he was trying to tell me and Nathan, he was trying to go on about how he was so intelligent, he has knowledge, and he knows about Gnostics and this, that, and third. And he said, Nathan said, yeah, he got on the mic, and Nathan said, yeah, Gnostics just basically means knowledge and this, that, and third. And the dude got mad and said, no, it doesn't, blah, blah, blah. And then it was so funny. He went in on and said, I'll bet you $10,000, right? Hold on, my son just came in. He just came in here wanting to tell me something. So he bet Nathan $10,000, right? And he was like, it's not knowledge and this, that, and the third. And it literally does. And I've read in so many different books, from uh, Alan Park. Is it Alan Pike? Alan Pike, Godfrey Higgins. Gnostics basically means knowledge. And I'm a big person on knowledge is power. I love knowledge is power. And what is your? Let me ask you guys. Why choose yourself as the title to be a Gnostic? Like, why? Like, Nathan, you go first, and then Lorenzo, because I really want to know, why is it such a thing to be a Gnostic? Why have that title as a Gnostic?
Well, the term title it was actually really given to us, but these days it's become popular because it's separated itself from orthodoxy, from mainstream Christianity, which really has bastardized the words of Jesus. Most of them don't follow Joshua, whichever name you like. They follow the teachings of Paul, and arguably not all authentic teachings of Paul. They follow the Roman church. They follow after their church. They follow after a minister, building a relationship with the church, a building, and the minister to rely on their minister, where a Gnostic goes straight to the source. So it's a personal relationship with God. It's coming to know Christ within, connecting with the Spirit within. So realizing your own divinity and your connection to God to truly understand what it actually means to be a son or daughter of God. So Gnosticism opens that path to those who feel rejected, who have suffered, especially those who will suffer from religious trauma from religious upbringings. I myself had a strong religious upbringing that was a bit freaky, if you can say. So this opened up new doors to me. So it brought back faith in a sense, but not only this, it gave me a true way of living. So actual life. And this goes to one of the first words I heard that really made me broke down and think. And it was from the words of Jesus in the Gospel of Thomas. And that was, blessed is the man who has suffered and found life. And if it was copied from the Greek, depending on the word they used, it can also translate, blessed is the man who has suffered and found spirit. So this is something that the church doesn't teach. They don't teach you to go inwardly. They teach you to search outside of yourself. Donate this. Work for my thrift shop. I don't think you're doing enough, Nathan. You need to work on my thrift shop a bit more. You don't need to go help those other people. You just need to be here.
Right.
That's what one of my ministers would even tell me as well. Back years ago when I was floating around different churches, I challenged a couple in my years and they didn't know how to respond because a lot of these people have never actually read the text thoroughly, let alone gave an open mind to what was rejected. And if you read what's been banned, and including the Old Testament as well, you get a deeper understanding. So Gnostic to me was basically a title that I could define myself as. Really, that might be a part of my ego looking for something to define myself as. But it brought me closer to the man we call Jesus, the historical man. And not only this, but I actually found him within my own self. So that's why I chose the term Gnostic Christian, though this term should be just Christian. I think maybe in 100 years' time, we will be just called Christians again, and what we call orthodoxy will cease to be.
Right. You know, it's funny you brought that up, and I'll speak on that more afterwards. But let me hear what Lorenzo say, because I know we're gonna jump into the questions about my book. But I was just interested in it because I want people to understand that being a Gnostic is just basically having knowledge. And when you read about all the apocrypha that has anything to do with Jesus, it's usually and always about his teachings, right? Which basically he gave knowledge to people. So for me, I just want to make that clear because, you know, not everybody knows all of us and what we're trying to do. Us three right here, the trio, we're trying to create things more than what most people are doing. And what I mean by that is actually having collaborations and actually discussions and disagreements that can have a fundamental middle ground to it, right? And what I mean by that is we don't agree on everything, but we can find an agreement on the possibilities because we're open to interpretations and understanding. So I just wanted to make that clear. What you think, Lorenzo? Why do you consider yourself a Gnostic, and why do you like that term and title better than others?
I don't know. I guess you could say I've always been like curious as a kid. I wanted to know the truth. I was kind of, I always had doubts in what I was told. And, as I grew up, I tested the waters of all sorts of different systems of belief, But yeah, mainly because I was a seeker of the truth and like of knowledge or wisdom. And it's just something that I feel deeply about. And yeah, it's something that I subscribe to. Like everybody who has a religion or a spiritual path, they subscribe to the cosmology and the mythology of their belief system. And I've always like wanted to read, the scripture and interpret it like how it was supposed to be interpreted, because, you get some people that they have a system of belief and they've interpreted it themselves, but they live their life a certain way that is not contrasting with what they're trying to, bring across. I've always had doubts, and I've went from, all polarities of systems of belief, and I've come to find that Gnosticism is a path of learning everything you can, and just getting to the bottom of everything. And I've got a bunch of influences that I've come to appreciate, like Carl Jung. He's I consider a prophet. People like Philip K. Dick, who's a science fiction author. Stephen Holler, who is the the bishop of the Ecclesia Gnostica Catholica, who's someone who researched, Carl Jung, um, and people like Joseph Campbell, who wrote books on, the myth and, the journey of the hero's journey. So I've always felt like I was like a hero in my own story, getting to the bottom of what what my perspective on life should be or what it's about. So I've been learning since I was young, and I've never stopped. And finally, I've come across Gnosticism, and it really grabs me in a way where now I'm like, okay, there were people just like me, in ancient times who were met with opposition, and
Right.
now I'm living in a world where you we live in the United States. You can believe whatever you want. This is the first time in history where you can have your own opinion. And yeah, we live in the United States. We're free to believe whatever it is we want, and Gnosticism is where it's at for me.
That's interesting. It's that's when I joined X Spaces or Twitter Spaces or whatever, what people know them by. It was interesting because that's the one thing that you would always hear is, everybody has an opinion, right? In so many ways, I agree with that, but I also disagree with that. And I disagree with it only with the caveat of your opinion needs to have some kind of knowledge behind it, meaning that you can't just say some shit just because you think you know what you're talking about, right? It has to be based on something that has actual facts behind or of a historical play with it, right?
Yeah,
So
we back it up with sources.
yeah, backing it up with sources because everybody talks about, oh, I go down the rabbit hole. So you like to admit that you're easily fooled, right? Because what does it mean, a rabbit hole? In most cases, a rabbit hole is something that you won't actually find anything in, right? It's usually something that leads you to a darkness, someplace where you won't have any light, no information or anything like that. It's a rabbit hole and it leads you to many, right? Well, I don't like to admit to rabbit holes or going down rabbit holes. What I try to understand is, okay, if you tell me a source, that's not a rabbit hole, right? Because I already know where I'm getting myself into, right? If you say, hey, the Bible is a good place to learn about Christianity, that's probably the first place I should go to and read is the Bible, right? And then I should go to all the texts within the Bible. Like when they talk about Enoch, I should go to the book of Enoch and read the book of Enoch. And then so on and so forth. Like I was talking about the Apocrypha. But let me ask you guys. Let's start with the first question. What was it that you guys wanted to ask me about my book? Because I know Lorenzo, you was like, man, you was very excited. I'm glad that you bought it. I appreciate it, man, because we all have to support each other. And I was talking about that for a while. When Nathan got his book, man, I definitely went and got his copy, man, and I was definitely happy for it. So um, what what really inspired you to get the book? Either one of you.
Well, I need to purchase a copy because now that you've just told me that there's some hard copies, so I'm very
Yeah.
excited for that. Lorenzo has beat me to it.
Yeah, I've just always been a fan of supporting friends, and
Yeah.
I'm honestly inspired to write my own book. Both of you guys have inspired me to start working on my own little project of getting something published. And people have been telling me, "Damn, you should write your own book." Because I've got wisdom, and I've had a pretty crazy life, and some people say I should write an autobiography, but yeah, I'm just a strong believer in promoting my friends, and yeah, I just had to support you, man.
I appreciate that. And like I was saying, we do have to support each other, but I also believe that, and I also told you, point out my faults, point out the fact that, hey, you probably might want to do some more research in this or this, that, and the third, because my one thing that I learned doing this is that telling people to do their own research is the stupidest thing to say. And I say that because my book is literally what I've researched and read, right? I mean, you can go through my Twitter account, Facebook account, or whatever social media account that I have, YouTube, and this, that, and the third. I talk about what I've read from actual books. So it's not my personal opinion. It's not me telling you what I believe or what I think. I'm reading actually from what the text says. I'm giving you a review of what I've learned. And I've heard plenty of people say to me, I need to do more research. And I think, and I know why they do it, because they don't know who I am, or they didn't even take the time to even research who I was or what I've done. Hold on.
And if you give me a minute, I'm gonna probably sign off for like a few minutes. I'll be right back. But I'm gonna just change locations. I'm gonna go out to the
No worries, no worries. I can handle things from here on that little bit until you get back. Oh, Spaz.
No, yeah, but yeah, my son had came in here. But no, what I was saying is you know, I go back to, I think we all should support each other, but most importantly, I think we should help each other with our puzzle pieces, because I can't read every single thing in the books. And you know, there's so many books out there, so much material out there, so much information out there, and it's impossible for just one or two people just to read it. It comes together with a combination. That's why I said, if somebody else can read something, I should be able to read it, right? And I should be able to break it down, and I should be able to do my due diligence and seeing how accurate you say what is what. I've read so much to the point where um, I could say something today, and then tomorrow my mind or opinion may or theory would change later the next day, because I read something differently, because I was given more information. We are only all given just a piece of the puzzle. We're not all given, you know, everything. And I even say it so many times. I think like in the first couple of first articles that I wrote, I talked about how to have every piece of information in one book would be a massive book. Nobody would be able to read it, right? You know, some people, as many people that say that they are religious and that they're a Christian or they're a Muslim or whatever, they didn't read their Bible, right? They haven't read it from cover to cover. They only read certain parts. And if you can go 20, 30 years, 40 years without reading the whole entire Bible from cover to cover and actually understanding it, then you haven't learned anything. Like when I read the Bible, I'm so confused on so much different stuff, because of the simple fact that I'm supposed to hear and understand that God is about love. But he wanted to kill certain types of children, right? And I didn't understand that, right? Like, and then I understood that God was all knowing, but he didn't know that Adam and Eve ate from the tree of knowledge until they told him. And it was by them depicting themselves to him how they told him. And that was hiding their, you know, private parts, right? They were naked at one time. And when he came around, they were no longer portraying that nakedness. Now, nakedness can be portrayed in so many different ways in the Bible, right?
Yep.
That it's something to be like, oh, why would God want that? Like, why? Like, when I'm a little kid and I hear the word naked, I'm thinking that, you know, I have no clothes on, right? No underwear, no socks, no shirt, pants, you know, nothing on, right? And then when I read what the ancient Hebrew context mean, when it was more about sexual activity, it's like, dang, is this the moment when I was a little kid watching a movie and a sex scene came on and my parents had to cover my eyes and tell me to go to the next room because they didn't want me to see it? And then my imagination ran because I was only told like the first 10 seconds, and because I didn't know what was going on, my imagination ran. Is that one of those type of moments? You know what I'm saying? I hope that made sense. Like, you're covering my eyes and my understanding about something,
yeah,
when this is reality. This is what life is about. This is what happens. When do we say that we are old enough to understand what is going on around us? And is that time frame too late? Right. And you know, when I read, I always try to find the understanding between every argument that is given about whatever subject it is at hand. And I know, for me, I wanted to know who God was. That was one of the reasons why I wanted to write the book, was because it was my journey to finding out who God was. No matter what you read, no matter what you do, religion is going to come into that subject. If you're an archaeologist, you're going to want to know about the religious background. If you study astronomy, you're going to want to know the religious correlations. If you study pottery, you're going to want to know the relationship with the depictions that are put on the pottery, right? Which most of the time goes back to the resemblance of God's, right? So I wanted to know who God was and which one was what. And because like I was telling Lorenzo earlier, when I first started, man, I'm mixed with so many different things. So I wanted to know who had the first story out of all the things that I was mixed with, right? From, Nigerian to German to Turkish to Japanese to Italian, to so many different things. I wanted to know the origins. And my book, like I said, my book is just about my journey. And I know you wrote a book too, Nathan, that I enjoyed. And I can tell you, in this day and age, a lot of people have opportunities to write books and they don't really write them. And just because you write a book doesn't mean that your information is right in this, that, and the third. It takes the person who's reading it to decide that by doing their due diligence and seeing this, that, and third. But what I think is missing in the book world or in the author world is a lot of people don't like to argue their points. Like, I'm waiting for somebody to get into the review section of my book, getting on Amazon and saying, hey, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about because these people never actually said that. Then I will actually go on and do a YouTube video, a short, because this is what I'm going to do. For every review that I get that somebody tries to tell me I don't know what I'm talking about, I'm definitely going to go to my library and say, hey, well, if I don't know what I'm talking about, it's not that I don't, it's that I read this from this book. So now you got to tell this person they don't know what I'm talking about. So when somebody says, okay, I'll give you an example. Like in my book, I talk about how there's no planet Nibiru. If somebody says, oh, yeah, there is definitely a planet Nibiru, Zachariah Sitchin said this, that, and the third. Well, I'll have other text that says there isn't, and that the gods, the Anuna gods or Anunnaki gods, actually came from the sea. And I will be able to present that because I know which book says that. I have it tabbed up, and I've also talked about it in the past. So I think what's missing in our world and being an author, and I hope I can break this in the future, is that if somebody has something to say to the person that said it, right? If you said that I don't know what I'm talking about and I had something incorrectly said, then I want you now I'm not only going to put you on blast and show you my facts and where I've read it from, because the facts is I've read it. It's not whether I'm right or wrong. The facts is I've read it, and I read it from somebody that's respected, right? If I can show that, right? Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. If I can show that, now it's your point to say, well, this person countered that. Now you're going to have to tell me what book you read it at and where you got it at. And eventually it's going to come down to, it's not where you read it at, it's their personal feelings. And they didn't know it. And that's what they're feeling or heard about. So yeah, it's, to me, it's always about presenting the information on hand that other people can read for themselves, not what I think it's right. But look, if the Anuna/Anunnaki came from the seas and not from a different planet, and this is where these gods are supposedly are coming from or whatever, I can present that from a book that I've read from Oxford University, who not only talks about the Anunnaki, but they have a whole dedicated crew to sharing who those individuals are. So now that I'm not wrong, you're telling me that these people who can actually read the cuneiform tablets are wrong. Now you have to take their cuneiform tablets and translate it and tell me which part they actually got wrong.
The sea makes a lot more sense as well. All life comes from water too. Our ancestors weren't stupid. Another thing is as well, in regards to ancient myths, our murky mother, our mother from the sea. We have this in Viking traditions as well. The story of Beowulf, etc. So even the sponge that they would use to lift up to Jesus, if you're raising it on a reef, and it's technically like a compound raising up, but it's a sponge from the murky mother, as it was seen belonging to the deep, which is still interesting. So Gnosticism, we have Yaldabaoth in the murky waters being created from Sophia as well. So we also had Gnostic Mesopotamians as well. There were ancient, and before this term, with Gnostic Christians being in Mesopotamia region, we also had ancient mystery schools there, and this was including in ancient Egypt. We had people mixing. We had Hittites later on mixing with the Sumerians and Egyptians, and Semitic people as well. Arguably, they would all start mixing as well in later periods of time. So, which is very interesting. But a lot of myths in the ancient world revolved around the sea, or had a story of a sea or floods, etc., in it, or someone traveling. So, but yeah, all life comes from the water. So without water, we wouldn't be able to exist. All life has some sort of liquid water in it, whether it's blood or.
Yeah, and that's actually what I'm going to start harping on a lot more this year, is about how these gods came from the seas rather than from a different planet, and it's only because of the actual text that was actually shared.
Yeah, and
So
recently they're starting to say that these UAPs are coming from the ocean. They're coming from the water instead of like from outer space, like the alien UFO conspiracy. They're starting to say, well, these things are coming from the water. They're coming out of the water. You know. So let's get into this book right here, Journey Through the Origins of History.
yes,
Our brother
sir.
Tyrone Ellington. I want to know what inspired you to write this.
Well, oh man, hey, hold on. Hey, Nathan, can you hear that buzzing?
Is that me?
No, I don't know.
Slightly I could, yes.
Yeah, I hear some buzzing for some reason. I don't know what the heck that is.
If I mute,
Oh, oh yeah, it probably was you. This is your Bluetooth, man. This Bluetooth doesn't work right. I swear, man. That's why I was, Matt. Before I start talking about what inspired me, I have this. I like to promote Lil Vibes music, and I'll play his music a little bit later. He has a lot of good music that talks about all the stuff that we talk about. Just a couple, what I think about a week or two ago, I did like a 30-minute or up to a 30-minute podcast, and I didn't have any audio because my Bluetooth and all this other stuff wasn't working, and it wasn't showing on any of the equipment that I had. But yeah, man, I hate this Bluetooth crap. But I'll tell you what inspired me, man. So I used to, being on social media, and I would hear people say things about God or mythologies about history that was incorrect, and I knew it was incorrect just based off the foundation of the information that I knew. Right? I give you a prime and good example. A very controversial example is uh, the Nazi symbol. Everybody believes that the Nazis came up with that symbol, right? But that's far from the truth, right? That symbol's been throughout thousands and thousands of years. It's just been modified to for their narrative and their idea. But the actual symbol itself has always been around. So when I used to hear people saying, that the Nazi symbol is what the Nazis first created, and I was like, oh man, that can go back all the way thousands and thousands of years ago. They don't know what they're talking about, and it used to hurt my head because you get online. There's 7 point something billion people in this planet. You can't argue with everybody. You can't have a discussion with everybody. You can't sit there and refute everything everybody says based off the information. So what I decided to do was, I said, if people actually cared, and if they really want to know the truth, and they really want to understand the history of stuff, then what I'm going to do and what I present, they'll follow. they'll look and they'll ask questions and they'll want to know more. So meaning that yes, I'm putting myself on a pedestal. I have the information because I've actually read it. Okay, when somebody says how many times have I read the Holy Bible, I can say more than I have, more fingers than I have on my hands, and how many toes I have on my feet, right? I've read read the Bible that many different times, and not just one version, but many. So instead of arguing with people and sitting here and trying to go back and forth with individuals, I just said, hey, I'll create a website and put all my frustration onto my website. And I'll write articles about what I know based on what I understood from what other people think they know, right? So I created my website. Like I said, four articles in, I got the opportunity to write a book. King Goodsword from Dimension Fold actually hit me up and said, hey, if you ever want to write a book, let me know. And I was like, well, shit, I don't know how to write a book. I'm not a writer. I'm not an author. I never went to school or nothing like that. But Grammarly is a good program that helps you write, right? You can write in however you want to in there, type however you want to say it, and Grammarly will help you convert it into a more professional manner. And that was my stepping stone to writing my book. So what I did was I already have information on my website and I have a lot of it, and I already know most of my stuff on my website is just a snippet of what I know. It's just me just saying this is what I know. And like I think like 6 months in, I was like, well, now I want to create a YouTube channel or a podcast, right? A Spotify account or something that I can talk to other individuals, get what other people know. Come do what I like to call, instead of a debate or an argument, I like to call collaborative discussions, right? Let's have a collaborative discussion, right? And uh the other one that I like to use is a comparative discussion, right? I compare what I know, what you know, and so on and so forth. And that led me to creating my podcast. I talked to respectable individuals from around the world: Robert Price, Jeff Benner, Dr. Keith Chang, uh, Dr. Sasha Lesson. I've talked to so many different individuals, man, that are respected in the community, right? Um, even Bruce Fenton. I talked to him, and I don't know if you guys know who he is. I disagree with a lot of stuff that he says, but I've talked to him, and I've talked to people that I disagree with, but that doesn't take away from me wanting to know what they know. See, the difference between most people and myself is I won't block anybody if they have information that I need to know. Whether I disagree with it or not, there's something that there's a reason why you're saying it, and I want to know what that reason is. And I'm going to find out whether that reason is, whether it's your own narrative, whether you're a racist, whether you're a bigot, where you're a chauvinist pig of some sort, or you just hate individuals, or you're just a troll. I'm going to find out because I want to see where your knowledge shows you. I'm going to ask you questions. I know most people ignore a lot of my questions on X. Like, for instance, I'll ask people, what is a civilization? Because they'll argue about what a civilization is and who's the oldest and who's the newest and this, that, and the third. And my question is what is your understanding of civilization? In most cases, that makes people angry. And I think it makes them angry because for the most part, they know that there is no one definition for a civilization, right? There isn't, right? There is no one definition. Everybody has their own. Same thing with technology. Fire was once considered technology. Hell, fire is still considered the best and only technology that we need for survival. That's why we survive so much to the point where we're at right now, is because of fire, right? And um, that's considered a technology, right? But most people, with their simple mindedness, a technology for them is having the newest iPhone or Android. And that's where I come in and try to say the argument comes into saying, okay, well, it's not just about, technology or your computers or your digital age or any of that other stuff. It's all about really what is your understanding of what you're talking about. Like my point is I always have to go to definitions. You know what I mean?
All right. Um, that will bring us to the next question
I was going
here.
to say, I have a question too,
Okay,
as well, so I can get one as well.
go first. Yeah, go first.
What's the favourite subjects you've discussed in your book, Tyrone,
You know,
or
my
topics?
my favorite topic is I didn't even really put them all in there. But the main thing is the journey. Like, okay, like I like to talk about the Sumerians. I talk a lot about them because academically, a lot of people consider them the first civilization. And because I took a class from uh from a prestigious school that's not credited, well, I'm not gonna say that's not credited. That I didn't go to the actual school. I took a class from edx.org, and anybody that knows about that know they give out free classes from different prestigious schools like Harvard and so on and so forth. And I actually took classes and I got certificates from them. But because the Sumerians are considered the first civilization because of their writing system, I go to them because of their academia. But I also make it a point, and I make it very clear in my book, that I understand why they are considered the first civilization. Because not only does Oxford gives a definition, their definition goes with their narrative. And that's why I say, as long as I can understand a person's idea, as long as they give me their definition and their understanding of their narrative, I can understand it. And I also make it very clear that the Sumerians aren't only considered the first civilization, that are the Egyptians, and then there are people before that. But that's why I make it clear that what is your understanding of definition of a civilization? And because Oxford University gives a clear distinction of a definition more than others, and most people follow Oxford University's definition of a civilization, I can see why the Sumerians are considered as of now. Now, like I said, I also understand very clearly that they aren't worldwide known. It's just academically, and it's only because certain colleges and universities accept that. And that's the hardest thing is in this in writing a book, I had to learn very quickly that you have to be very careful what you say, because a lot of people will say, well, the Sumerians were the first civilization, and people will ask me, well, why do I consider them the first civilization? I give you exactly why. I took a class, and Dr. Nili Samet was the professor that was teaching the class and stuff from edx.org, said that it was because of their writing system. Now, I can give you a source on why I said that, but I can also give you a source from the Egyptians being the first civilization. Just like I took a class from a prestigious school that says that, right? Then I can give you another source that says there was something before the Egyptians. So my point is that when I say knowledge is power, is that I have the knowledge and power to understand that when you say the Egyptians were the first civilization, I would say, okay, I have the power to say I agree with that. If you say the Sumerians were, I have the power to agree with that because I've read that. If you say somebody else was, I can have the power and I can agree with that because of what I said. Now, if you ask me my personal opinion, which I have yet to give any indication on who I think is the earliest civilization yet, I can understand what the many different ideas. And it's a journey. That's why I call it, journey through the origins of history, because it is a journey. No journey. Sometimes you're going to go through a nice paved road and your drive is going to be smooth. Then you're going to go down a bumpy road, right? Then you're going to go down a muddy road, a sandy hip road, a winding road, a scary road. All these different types of roads, and there's a journey through it, and that's what I try to present in my book.
All right. Did you uncover any surprising or lesser known historical facts while researching?
Yeah. The Anunnaki coming from the seas. That's a good one. Because for many, many years when I was studying this, it was always asked and questioned where the Anunnaki came from. Right. And I read a book from the Oxford Handbook, and I've actually shared it plenty of times. You can easily go to my Twitter account, type in Seas or SEA or SEAS, and do an advanced search under my profile, and you will see that where I got the information from. And when I read that they came from the depths of the seas, that tells me when when it comes to mythology that they didn't come from a planet Nibiru, that they came from the depths of the sea. They're not from somewhere else. They're from here. Now that tells me that when people believe the Elohim and the Anuna / the Anunnaki are one and the same, that's telling me that the Elohim, according to those people who consider them to be the same, came from the depths of the sea. Jesus was known as a fish god, right? So all this right here to me seems like instead of being fooled to thinking that things came outside of our Earth atmosphere and some other planet, we need to start looking within. You know, even with the UFOs and the aliens and all this other stuff, you know, these orbs and all this other stuff, all this other stuff goes on. You know, like I bought a really good camera just recently, and it's supposed to be a telephoto camera, right? And when you zoom in to the planets, they look like orbs, like orbs. Like, I'm not kidding. And it's only because I understand the digital and all this other stuff, you know, how the atmosphere can change the looks and all this other stuff. But in reality, it looks like orbs. When I read the
I
Bible,
also put something in. Sorry to bother you. And the mentioning of coming from the sea makes perfect sense, because even if you said you used the term, I think it's Nibiru, if you used it in the Acadian language, which would basically translate to river crossing or crossing on ferry boats. Yeah. So,
yeah, that's funny you say that, because back then crossing a river was the scariest thing. That's actually in the Chinese myths. If you read the Chinese mythologies and their stories, crossing a river was the most scariest thing to do. Most scariest thing to do. Now, if we look at the idea of people crossing rivers in Egypt, it's more scarier there. Why? Because you have to remember all the reptiles that's in there, the hippopotamuses, the alligators or crocodiles or whatever, the snakes. It was dangerous. And I'm telling you, reading the Apocrypha book that I was just telling you guys on the Gnostics, it literally talks about that stuff. Crossing the river was the most dangerous thing. So just trying to research that and understand that is where it gets me at. But like I said, when they talk about that these individuals came from the seas, that there's actually text that says they came from the seas and no text that they came from outside of planet Earth. What am I supposed to believe as a person? Somebody who is trying to share knowledge. Like, just imagine, let's take this a step back for a second. I walk into a room full of people who say that the Anunnaki came from a planet Nibiru, right? And they're so high strung, they're so confident, they'll bet their life on it, right? I go in there and say, hey, well, did you know that the same sources that you are saying that actually says that doesn't have them coming from a planet, but rather from the seas? And I can show you. And I pull up the information, show them, give them the tools, just like I could give anybody the tools to change the oil in their car, show them how to do it. And at the end of the day, do you accept that was the right way to do it? Well, the only way to accept that the right way to do it is that your car lasted throughout that entire oil change, right? Meaning that everything went right like it was supposed to, right? I drained it like I was supposed to. I changed the oil filter. I changed the other filter if it has it. You know, I put another oil filter on there. I put more oil in there, the oil that is reserved for it. That means the vehicle ran, right? I gave them the tools to make that vehicle last another oil change. Now, if I'm giving you the tools to go look and see that they came from the depths of the seas, then that's fine. Take it. But what I hate people doing is that they say that the individuals came from a different planet and they don't give you a source for that. Let alone they even know about cylinders COVA 243, but they don't give you a source for that at all. They just say this person says that. But I can give you the uniform
planet story. Comes from like 1976 from a book, 12th Planet.
Yeah.
But that would be a mix-up of things from being associated with gods being associated with planets, but a
Yeah,
lot of people also just knock off the ancient mystical use, the narcotics being used, the mind-altering substances, even alcohol was used as well to alter the
yeah,
mind.
wine.
Ignore a
They
lot.
drank wine like it was water. Wine was like water because they could purify it, right? Um, you made a good point. That the 1976 with the 12th planet from Zachariah Sitchin, that's where most people get their information from, and there's nothing wrong with that. Zachariah Sitchin said what he said. I'll even vouch for him and say that I've read him even say that he was given information that he can't even give a source for because they wouldn't allow him to do it because there was only but so many people that knew that source, and they would knew who would they need to fire in case that information came out, because there was only a select few, right? And those people were working. I can understand it and I can get that. But my point is like this: I'm tired of the bullshit. If you're really out here trying to share information and you're serious about it, then either go all in or don't go in at all. Okay? You can't sit here and say, well, I don't want to say too much because I don't want to sacrifice my safety. First of all, who are you to judge what somebody else decides what you're saying too much on? Okay, you might just say enough. You don't even have to say enough for some people to take you off this planet, or make you look stupid, or make you look bad, or this, that, and the third, right? It only just takes somebody motivated enough to do it. But my point is this: people don't sacrifice nothing these days, right? I'm not sacrificing anything because everything that I share is literally available to the public. I have no secret books. I have no hidden information. I don't hide. I have nothing that is forbidden. Everything that I share literally comes from a book that I've read or a source that I've read. It just takes that person the opportunity to do that. And that's why I try to give them snippets in the book. My book is basically like a trailer to history. Like, if you're interested in this and you like this right here, you want to look more into this, right? If you're interested in this and you like this, you might want to look more into this. And I give you the foundations to make a good argument. Everything that I say in my book is literally a good argument because it's something that I've read that was recorded based off of respect from somebody that went through the scholarly and the teachings of that information. Most of the time, the people who actually read the information for themselves, and a lot of it, like I said, I give sources for everything that I read. Like I always talk about ETCSL, Electronic Text Corpus of Sumerian Literature. You don't have to believe a word that I say. Everything I say, you can go in there and read it yourself.
I guess I got the next question, for the book. Would you like to tell the audience watching how much the book will cost?
Oh yeah, so I think it's like $6.99 for the Kindle version and like $24.95 for the hard copy. I'm glad you said that because I am going to purchase some, but what I am going to do, of course, is the autographed copies of mine will be $40. Like I said, I was telling Lorenzo earlier, I'm trying to buy another computer because I think what I want to do for all of us is I want to create a documentary. I wrote a book and it made #1 in many different categories on Amazon, which I'm grateful for. And now I want to create a documentary. And we've already talked about that, putting our minds and uh, um, uh, skills and knowledge together on creating this documentary. But you know, I'll be honest with you. Pricing a book wasn't my choice. But I think for $24, even 25 or even $40 for an autographed copy of a book, I think that's awesome. And I say that because I'm not going to be one of these individuals that's going to stop there. Anybody that reads my book and wants to have a discussion with me, I will literally have a discussion with them on StreamYard. I mean, I can't say I'll have a discussion with 100,000 people or 1,000,000 people, but I like to have discussions. I really enjoy them because that's how I learned. I learned a lot of Gnostic stuff by you guys. I don't follow just one thing. I follow like a whole bunch of different things. Like I want to know it all. Like I'm going to actually do um, a discussion with you guys on the Luciferian Bible and compare that to what we know on the Bible. And I think that's what we should do because a lot of people don't know about, the Luciferian Bible. They don't know, and they don't even know what's in it. And I think a lot of people will be shocked to see what's in it. And some people, I can almost guarantee you, we could probably present it to the point where people would be like, if we was to do like, did this come from the Luciferian Bible or did this come from the Holy Bible? And some people would actually pick some of the things that came from the Luciferian Bible that they think would be in the Holy Bible because they wouldn't know the difference, right? So, I like to call it what, a jack of all trades and an expert in none, something like that, because I'm not an expert in religion. I can't read ancient Hebrew. I think that's what makes an expert, right? If you're an expert in religion, you have to learn, you have to be an expert in the religion, know the language of the religion that you're speaking about. So if you're an expert in, if you say you're a Christian, then Latin, or yeah, but what I'm saying is you have to at least understand, like you're teaching yourself translations for your stuff. So I would consider you an expert. I don't I would say
Lazy expert.
well, I would say that because you've already translated stuff. You see what I'm saying? I haven't translated anything. Who's to say that your translations are wrong? The only way they can do that is by getting on the mic with you and saying, hey, how did you come up with what you said? And you can present that. And I think that's where a lot of people get a problem, where a lot of people
I
have
also
problems
like
with.
to use Bill Mount, sorry. He's one of the top experts in Greek biblical language there is in the whole planet. So I like to refer to him for a lot of translations, but I don't strictly rely on him. I use other translators too, to guide me as well as a translator. I use encyclopedia, dictionary. I mostly just know prayers and maybe a few chants. But
Yeah, but
expert-wise, that two different things. There's expert in the Old Testament and expert in the New, because the New comes from Greek and the Hebrew is the Old Testament. But the thing is, we don't have those original Hebrew texts. The oldest complete text we have is Greek.
Yeah.
So unless you go into Dead Sea Scrolls, then you're looking at some Hebrew, Aramaic, and again Greek. So it's mostly delving on Greek knowledge there if you want to be a full-on expert. And even my knowledge on Greek is basic, but I know more than people that are full experts. And I've had people that can speak the language come back and say, oh, that's killer. I forgot that this word means this too. And that's actual experts that can speak it way better than what I can. I wouldn't even say I know it. I just say I know a prayer or two. That's about it,
Yeah. And that's why I say we all have a piece of the puzzle. Is I even put that on my website, when I did my website 4.5 years ago, is that we all have a piece of the puzzle, and we won't know what those pieces show until we all get together, right? For me, starting on this journey, I was confused where to start. I can read the Bible, but how well can I understand the Bible if I don't understand the way people were living like that? And then taking how they were living back then and understanding what they went through. I spent time in Iraq and Afghanistan, and I seen the layout and the landscape and how the conditions that they lived in. And I can tell you that in many cases, looking up at the sun, you're going to pray for a whole bunch of different things. Man, I hope it's cooler today. I hope it's not as bright. I hope some rain comes. I hope this or that. That's a type of a prayer, right? I know it gets more deeper with that and so on and so forth. But for me, trying to figure out who God was, who Jesus was, how did religion start, what was the meaning, what could be the origins of it. And I've read that the Neanderthals, when they started burying people, that was the first indication of what we would consider life after death, and life after or and a type of reincarnation, because our bodies go into the ground, right, which create, some kind of minerals and sustaining life for the plants around it, and basically fertilizing and stuff like that. We just recycle through our lives, and the energy never dies, and so on and so forth, because life after death, and so on and so forth. But when the Neanderthals were burying people, that's when I learned, that can be an indication of life after death, which later turned into believing in gods. And if there's life after death, that means that after death there has to, if somebody's in charge of our life, right? Like kings and queens and gods and goddesses and so on and so forth, there has to be somebody in control of the afterlife, which it'll probably be the same kings and queens and so on and so forth. So you know I took all that with consideration, all that.
All right. I wanted to ask you about the writing process and about how long did it take for the research of this book?
So let's say, okay, so I honestly want to say, and I didn't start thinking about this until probably, I want to say probably like a week or two before I published it. I think I've been writing this book probably my whole life. Most people, when they say that they're about to, that they know that a new movie or video game is about to come on, they know that it's not with the writing, right? It's usually the thought process, putting the ideas together, right? People coming up with the ideas in their heads. And that's where I think that my writing my book started, was from the moment that I decided to gather my information and put it together as remembering it, and then later on putting it into what I would call a book, what my book is. Um, I can say definitely the last 4.5 years is where I took most of the majority of my information, because it was the most recent, and also it was the most information that I can actually go back and reference without having to second guess myself. So meaning that I read it just recently, or I read it a couple of years ago, I already have it tagged up. Let me go to this book and read it. So when I talked about the Mahabharata, well, I've read a couple of different versions of the Mahabharata, so I know exactly what it says or what it's about mostly, and I can just stick with that, with the foundation. Like, I didn't try to get into too deep with it, because that's where translations get lost. Like, and I give you an example. The Mahabharata, it's basically about a dice game, and I can take that and apply that to whatever it is I want to. I know it's about a dice game. I know it's about cousins getting into an argument. I know it's about people taking individuals' wives and so on and so forth. There's so much in there, but the main thing of the Mahabharata is literally a dice game. So that's what I know. I know a lot about it, and I know that when I go read the Mahabharata, I have tags that literally talk about how it's a lot about a dice game and so on and so forth. I actually did a video on it, and it's interesting because I actually got into a discussion with somebody about it. Um, he said I had said something about the Mahabharata. He actually said, "Well, what is your understanding of the Mahabharata?" And I said, "I find the Mahabharata kind of funny because it's about a dice game." When anybody that grew up watching, uh, African American films, when people were playing dice, when people were, playing dice and they was, trying to rip people off, there's usually a fight in it, right? Boys in the hood. You what? Yeah,
Shoot
yeah,
crap.
exactly. Yeah, so that's why I said I found it funny, because I was like, oh shit, man, these motherfuckers was playing like this back in the day. I could just imagine how they was, and they say, yo, give me some, give me some, give me some. They shaking up the dice in their hand and they throwing it against the wall and stuff like that. But I know it wasn't like that. It was a certain type of dice game. But when I see dice game, I see it as what I know it here culturally here in the US, right? What I know it as. And I know it's a different type of dice game over there. But it's just, like I said, it's just funny to me because we all have our type of dice games where people were just going to start fighting over. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Even dice has a large history of being considered sacred somewhat, being
Yeah, I was
decided
just
by the
gonna say
gods
that.
of the odds. And if we look at throwing things in the air. One, we were throwing spears before this, so no doubt odds of the gods would have delved into that. But throwing bones, oracles, shamans. Here's something cool. The Urim Thummim, what the ancient Jewish people would throw in the air. God, is this woman guilty because she committed adultery or is she innocent? If that stone landed on black, then it was either no or yes, or if it landed on white, it would delve on the answers. If she was convicted because of the odds of a stone landing on the floor, she was stoned to death. So the rabbis would meet in secret, throw the stones in the air. Black, I'm pretty sure black meant no and white meant yes. So depending on what it was, and it would evolve over time, the answers would become more complex. Jewish scholars are actually unsure when they stopped using this practice, but it's somewhat mentioned in the Bible. They would start wearing it along their cloaks for the holy shrouds or whatever, for the jewelry that they would wear. So the decorations. But before wearing them and stuff, they were throwing them in the air, which is pretty trippy. So your trial, your fate, could be decided on literally stones or bones being thrown in the air, which was pretty hardcore.
Hey, yo, it's funny that you say bones, because in Mesoamerica that I'm gonna say it's a type of ball game. Remember where they had to kick the little skull head through the little hoop? Remember one of them from the Popol Vuh? You see how everything just connects? You see how everything literally just connects? You literally just said that, and it's true. Throwing stones or dice and bones was a thing, because a lot of times dice were made out of bones back then. And that's where, with my book, I try to give the origins of stuff. And what I mean by origins of stuff is like okay, I mentioned Jesus being a fish god, right? Or depicted as a fish god. Well, where's the origins of that? Well, you can go to Mesopotamia. Where is ancient Hebrew from? Where is Abrahamic faith from? Well, we know it's from Mesopotamia. So it's literally all Mesopotamia, right? Because we know it comes from that idea. But then you go into the depictions of Göbekli Tepe. You go to the depictions in China with their fish gods. The Japanese mythologies and the Chinese mythologies are literally one and the same, because what I've read from so many different texts is that a lot of it is just based on the same story, just told slightly different with modified names, of course. And that's how you find most of these ancient texts, period. Like when you find the flood story in America, the flood story in Africa, the flood story in China, the flood story in Australia, the flood story in Brazil or South America or Central America, they all have where individuals were getting on the boat. Well, of course they was getting on a boat, because that's what they had back then. Right, of some sort, right? They would call it a boat. Whether, some people call ships boat, some people call yachts boats, right? They got on a boat. We know that it was something that was above the water that floated, or some people will actually say it was a submarine, but I don't want to get into that right now.
Also, we have the Phoenicians, which is a Greek word coming from Phoenici. They were Semitic people. They were known for seafaring. They had a great general, Hannibal, who was named after one who's favored by Baal. And he almost conquered Rome. If they conquered Rome, we wouldn't be speaking arguably Germanic language, which is a variant of English now. Well, English is a variant of the German language and mixture a bit of Latin or whatever. We would be speaking Semitic language. We would be speaking Canaanite or Hebrew. And there were even Israelites that also followed Hannibal, believing that their name meant God favored them, as Baal could just mean Lord. So not all did. Some would have rejected him too, as well, as some were anti-Baal. But yeah, with the regarding of seafaring and religions coming from the sea, traveling different lands as well, definitely something's gone on here. Like, we reflected in our religions what we were seeing, even when you mentioned before the Neanderthals being buried. We also had depictions of their art. We had ancestor religions believing that their ancestors were the gods that would pass on into those realms that would guide them to them realms. We also had Marcus Aurelius' belief that
the Egyptian Book of the Dead is a good example of what you just said.
Marcus Aurelius also believed that as the earth would go down, the old dead bodies that were buried would go pushed further down, make way for new dead bodies, and this would be similar to the afterlife. So they would dwell in the divine realm. They would then become a part of the source, God itself, or the gods,
Mhm.
and in self, that realm would make way for new souls that would be worthy to dwell there, which is pretty interesting.
Yep. 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 You're right. You're right. You're definitely right. All right, go ahead, Lorenzo. What you got,
Meditations
brother?
amongst Julius.
So, I was just curious if you had any other ideas for more books coming.
Yeah, I actually want to do a children's version of the book that I just did. I'm gonna do a
That's
children's
right.
version of that so people can sit down with their kids if they love history. They can sit down with them, and it could be written in you know in a way for the child to understand and ask questions to their parents. Actually, my son, he's speech delayed. He has autism, but he can read. I can take any of these books that I have around me and put it in front of him, and he can read. I mean, he literally reads like he's a grown man. He's just speech delayed, and he actually understands what he's reading, which is amazing. And I've tested it and put it to test so many different times, and it's very shocking. And that's why in my book, and also on one of my articles in my website, rebirthoftheword.com, I talk about savant syndrome because when I was telling you guys earlier about the snow that we just got the last few days, my kids had to do uh, virtual learning over for their schools, right? And my daughter, she's 7 years old. She can read. She doesn't have autism. She doesn't have any ailments like that we know of. And listening to her and comparing her and what she known against her classmates, it really surprised me. And I'm not saying surprised like, oh, okay, I knew my kid was smart, but how is she this smart? It surprised me to the point where it made me understand more of what savant syndrome is, right? Like like I said, she doesn't have autism, but my son does. And anybody that knows anything about savant syndrome is mostly comes from people with autism, right? And like I said, my son doesn't speak, but he reads. And knowing about history and how we started nurturing our children's disabilities or people's disabilities and so on and so forth, and giving them an opportunity to at least live a dignified life with dignity and honor and respect, just like anybody else. Um, it made me understand that these ailments that everybody has, or all these ailments that we do have, or that's around this world, it takes a special group of individuals to want to nurture that. And that's why part of writing my book and understanding my kids helped me with that. Okay. And I give you an example. And I was trying to say this the best way I could without messing it up. Like I said earlier, my son, he speaks delayed, but he can read. And that helped me put a part of savant syndrome in there because he's using a part of his brain that he wasn't taught to use. It just came natural, right? Savant syndrome happens naturally. It's not something that you can induce purposely, even though that there are depictions in mythology and throughout Egypt where people getting, having brain surgeries of some sort. Right now, I have a brain injury. I have a TBI from being blown up in Afghanistan. So I understand, that you can have unique things happen to you after a brain injury. And I feel like I have that. And that's what led me on my journey. But understanding something naturally like savant syndrome, like with my son being able to read, or my daughter being able to do mathematics like it's nothing. And I say this and I bring that all that up because for the simple fact that even though my son can read, you know, communication doesn't start with letters. It starts with mathematics. And that's what my daughter's really good at. Now, there's always this stigmatized idea out there that women or girls are not good at math. Well, I can tell you right now, at 7 years old, my daughter's definitely better than me at math than I am at 41 years old. And I'm not even ashamed to say that. But it's just knowing that our educational level doesn't revolve about a certificate or how many books you've wrote or what's in your books or what you've done or what you've accomplished. It's all about what made you happy through your journey. And that's what made me happy through my journey, is sharing what I've learned. I don't know everything. And there's a lot of things that I wish I could have put in my book. And I think about it every day, like, man, I could have put this in, I could put that in, but I couldn't because there's so much to put in there. But because my kids motivated me to do that, I hope to inspire them to do stuff like that, to write a book or write um, or create something that can be remembered for many years to come. Because at the end of the day, uh, I have an ISBN, and that means that my book will always be out there some way, fashion, or form. It's going to be out there, and that's amazing to me because that means um, I created something lasting, right? And it's just whether my journey is going to stop there or continue, and it's going to continue because the next book that I want to write, like I said, is a children's version. Then I also want to I want to create that documentary, which we already talked about. So
Nice. And before we wrap this up, we're going to probably wrap it up pretty soon here, but we just want to tell the audience, where can we find the Journey Through the Origins of History?
I'm sorry, I muted myself. Say that one more time.
Said, since we're about to wrap it up, where can people find Journey Through the Origins of History? Where can they purchase this book?
Just go to Amazon. You can definitely find it there. If you want an autograph copy, hit me up. I do want to say, everybody out there, hey, this isn't about me, man. This is about, Nathan and Lorenzo. I want you guys to follow these guys. I followed Nathan for years. He has a lot of great knowledge out there. Lorenzo, he's been putting me on a lot of good information, and I think that they giving me this opportunity to talk about my book is cool. But I think it's better to you give them a shout out because they definitely, if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't have been able to have some of the information that I have right now. So I appreciate that.
Right on. Thank you. Is there anything else you'd like to share about the book that we haven't spoke about?
Um, like I was telling you guys, um, we're gonna start doing whenever I get my hard copy in, because I'm waiting for my hard copies to come in. We're gonna do discussions on it. We're gonna do chapter by chapter, paragraph by paragraph, sentence by sentence, word by word. What can we talk about?
That's right. Yeah, I haven't quite gone through it and read the book since I just got it, but yeah, that sounds good. We can go through it a little bit more deeper later on.
Yeah, hell yeah, definitely. All
I
right,
was
well,
going to say, those that are looking, you should possibly as well, most likely you should, put a link of your book from Amazon in the description of this video and then in the comment section later on for those who jump on. So they can just click on the link, it takes them straight to the place and they can purchase your book.
Yeah, I'm gonna do that.
Later look.
Heck yeah, I'm gonna do that. I appreciate that. All right, well, I'm gonna end it, and then of course we're gonna have our offline discussions. Follow Nathan, follow Lorenzo. We're gonna be doing big things. We're gonna do a lot of more different things. We're actually gonna put something together in the next few weeks to a month. So be on the lookout.
All right.
All right.
Yeah, a lot of fun, man.
Lots of notice.